Welcome to part 4 of our homage to Stranger Things Season 5 opening sequence. We've already got our lighting set up, we've got everything working in terms of atmosphere and volumetric effects and all of that materials all set up in the previous video. The lighting's working. And all that's left right now is to really render this out and go ahead and work with the audio. So I'll go over some of the render settings I'm going to use and we'll render this out. So let's get into that. So there's just a couple more things I wanted to do to add some final details and add some refinements before we wrap this up and render it to get our audio effects in. So one thing I thought of is, wouldn't it be cool if when we get to this branch right here, we see some more vines in the area? And I think it would be, so I'm going to do that. The way I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this vines object, and I'm going to delete all of the objects inside of it. So let's, so vines, we'll call this one tree vines, hero. So I'm going to say select, and then I'm going to find one of these points, Control A, delete. So I didn't delete any of my vines, right? I deleted the duplicate. But what's cool is I still have a spline here that I can work with. And so all I have to do is grab my sketch tool with the spline selected, turn my snap back on to polygon. And then I can come to my tree and just put some vines on my tree. They're huge. I'm going to make them smaller. I might use my just spline pen. I just wanted to add a few splines on there. So I just wanted to add a couple more splines onto this guy and see how it looks. I think it looks pretty cool. All right, so let's see what our flakes are looking like. We'll go ahead and turn our flake system back on. Open this up, turn on our basic emitter. And if you want to be able to scroll through and see how things are looking in real time, there's one thing you can do where you can cache your basic emitter particle group. And so what I'll do is come into this particle group to the cache, and I'll say cache mode. And I'll say cache the scene. It's going to ask me where I want to save that. And I'll put it in my Stranger Things demo. I'll just go ahead and make a new folder for that called particle cache. And call it flakes. That'll go through and save this as a file that we can easily have access to. And then we'll do just a couple more passes through here just to double check things, see how we feel about the quality of our materials, set up our render, and go get some coffee while we wait for that to happen. All right, now that we've got our flakes rendered out, you can see them floating around with a little bit of a problem. They look like little seeds, and that's because the particles themselves are actually rendering. We don't want that to happen. And so what I want to do is come into my particle group, and I'm going to hide this in the renderer and the editor. Now we can do a preview again, and we can see what's happening. So we shouldn't be seeing the little speck centers anymore. We should just be seeing the flakes. I love the way these vines are so shiny. So I just want to scroll through and get a sense for how the particles are looking in different spots. I think they're just a little bit too opaque, and so I want to change the particle flake render quality, and I'm going to do it in this lightning scene because that's where it's most apparent to me. So I'll make sure I save my file, and I'm going to open this flake material. I think what I want to do to adjust that is actually add a color correct in the middle here. I want to change the brightness. There we go. So I want it to look good all the time, not just when the lightning's on. I feel like if they're a little funny looking when the lightning comes on and a little dark, that'll be okay, but either side of the lightning is kind of more important. So I may have gone too far. Let's do 0.7. Yeah, I'm gonna swap it back to, I'm swapping it to that material. I like the way that material looks better. So I changed it from this gradient to this other one that I brought in earlier. I'm just gonna go through a few different frames here. Things are slowing down dramatically on my computer, probably on yours too if you're doing this. So this is where you begin to just make some adjustments and hope things start to work out. So 0.7, they're too bright. 0.5, they look better. 0.3, they look even better. I like this transparency level. I think that looks cool. So I'm happy with that there. So this is the pan. I'm still happy with them in this scene. I'm still happy with them in this scene. Happy with them here as well. So yeah, I think that's working out pretty well. Okay, one final thing I want to add before we do our renders is some shallow depth of field. And to do that, for some of the cameras, it's going to be very easy. For this one, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to do all my focus changes without looking through the render, and then we'll do some additional looks through the through our render view. So let's just squish these over to the side for a little bit. I'm not going to be rendering anything. I'm actually going to save another version of this. I'm going to hit Save Incremental. That'll give me another copy of my file. I just feel like things are starting to feel a little bit clunky in my system, so just as a safety. Safety is important. So let's look at this camera. And I'm going to turn on Options, Depth of Field. I'm going to come to my pan cam, and I'm going to go to Optical and turn on bokeh, and I'm going to put my aperture value at 2 and see how that feels. Okay, I put my aperture value at 1, see how that feels. Where do I want to focus? Well, I think I want to always be focused on my hero tree. And so what I'm going to do is grab my hero tree. I'm going to drag it as the object my camera is focusing on. I'm going to do the same thing for my tree cam. Turn on bokeh. We'll put it at like 1 or 2. This one actually is going to have to be a lot bigger. So the depth of field will be less here, because if I do it too much, our lightning will be blurred. We don't want that. But let's have our hero tree be the focus. So when we're in our lightning view, the hero tree is the focus. When we're here, the hero tree is the focus. Let's do some tests with those settings. All right, so I'll do a test here. Because I think that adds a little something, having a little fuzziness for the flakes as they get closer to the camera. So I kind of dig it. And I'm going to go a little closer to the end here. And I feel like having a little fuzziness here is nice too, but I don't like it to be so fuzzy. So I'm just going to turn it down slightly. I'm going to put it back to 1. I want to get some of this reflection happening. Cool, happy with that. Here's our lightning, still nice and sharp. So our tree cam's looking good. If I change it to something like 3, what happens? Still looks pretty cool. 1. 1 still looks pretty cool. 0.1. 0.1 looks terrible. 0.6 still looks pretty cool. I think I can live with 0.6. And now for our limb cam, I'm going to add in a null object, and that's going to be our focus point. So for the limb cam, I'm going to start with a null object, turn off our render, zoom out, I basically want this null object to land right on this limb. As a focal point. And what I want to have happen is for it to shift from the distant tree to this tree about right here. And so about right there is where I'm going to keyframe the position of this focus. And I want there to just be a shift of focus along about that much. Not very, I mean, it needs to happen over a pretty quick, short distance, right? So from here to there, we'll say I want the null object to be on this tree. And if we tell our tree cam, our limb cam, to have bokeh turned on and to be at like 1, we want this one, I think, to be a little bit more blurry. I didn't tell it to focus on this, so I need to drag this focus object into our camera. So we're essentially going to be focused on that tree very strongly, and then it's going to rack focus to our viney tree right there. So we'll just do a couple test renders through that spot, see how it feels. I think that's entirely too fuzzy, so we're going to do 1, 2 maybe. Okay, I'm liking the way that this is looking. So I'm going to go ahead and render this out. So stop looking through my render view. I'll save this and we'll set up our render settings. So let's come into our Redshift render settings. I want to render out 1920 by 1080. I want to render out all of my frames. I want to make sure my stage object is turned on, and I want to save these out as JPEGs in my Stranger Things demo folder under rendered frames. ST-demo. And now I want to come into my render settings for Redshift. I'm just immediately going to change this to advanced. Under threshold, I'm going to say 0.6. Under random noise pattern, I'm going to say no. Under denoising, I'm going to say yes. Global illumination, both brute force. So once we've made those changes and we do any kind of previews, it's now using those settings to give us the look that we're going to get. So wonderful. I'm pretty happy, and I'm going to go ahead and just hit render, and I'll see you back after this is done, and it's probably going to be tomorrow. It looks like our render has turned out really well. It took about 3 to 4 hours to render the final piece out. So you can see in this rough playback inside the picture viewer that everything's working kind of as we expected. The lighting's looking good. Our particles are looking nice. And loving this cut with the nice texture on the wood and the vines that we created. So now that we've got these single frames rendered out, let's pop into After Effects. I'm going to go ahead and close this all out for us. So I've got a new After Effects composition started, and I'm just going to load in our rendered frames. So I'm going to go to File, Import. So here are our rendered frames. Anytime you're going to bring in rendered frames like this, you just select the first one and make sure that the JPEG sequence selection button is selected, and you should have that come in as footage. And so we'll take this footage and bring it down into this Create New Composition from Footage option. And here we can play through and work on some additional effects and add in our audio. Let's go ahead and bring in our audio. I'm going to be using some audio from freesound.org, and I'll put the links to or at least the titles and the license information for the pieces that I use in the description below. But let's go ahead and bring those in. And so I've got some Stranger Things synths, some wind farms, some thunder cracks. I'll just go ahead and bring all of those into my file. And I'm going to begin with this wind farm footage that I found out there. It sounds kind of fun, so I'm going to be putting my headphones on so I can hear the audio in this, and I think it's always important to edit with headphones on. So this is what we have. It's from a wind farm. I just thought it felt appropriate for this piece, so I'm just going to drag that down in here. And if we hit L once and open up our waveform, we'll be able to see that. So what I want to do is have this change a little bit for each piece of footage. So I'm going to hold down my Control key and zoom back. And what I'll do is create a decibel level change here. So I'm going to start off with it just being a little bit quieter. And over the period of 1 frame, I'll hit Control forward. I'm just going to increase that back to 0. Right, so that effect gives us a little bit quieter and then a louder version of it. So And we can make some adjustments to those. Okay, I feel like it's just a little too loud for us. So I think the first one, I'm going to bring it down to like -10. And the next one I'll bring to -6. Just want something in the background. I'll do that same thing on this one. Actually, I think because we're kind of in it now, I'm just going to let it do the same. Kind of fade it out. We'll just do a quick fade out. And so I'll say keyframe at current time marker, and then we'll just bring it down. And visually now we can see till that kind of comes to a close. And now I've got some thunder cracks and thunder rumbles that I have saved, so I think I'll bring this one down. This thunder crack file sounds like this. So that one I think is perfect for our lightning. So I'm going to bring that in. And let's open that up. If you hit LL, it'll show you the waveform right away, so I can simply come into that lightning strike and drag this over to time it with that. There's a little bit of a rumble in there, which is pretty nice. And I think I can hit L again and just kind of crank the decibel level up on this a little bit. I want that to be pretty loud. And from here, I think I will add in the additional thunder rolls. Let's see, I think there's a couple of thunder rolls here. Just one. So that feels more like a background one, and so I'll take this one and bring it in. And I think what I want to do with this one is just have it in here a little bit quietly for some of the beginning parts. So when we just see the red glow, I want to. It's almost timed itself perfectly. Yeah, so maybe we'll take that and then duplicate this thunder crack, bring it up above, and turn this one down a little. We'll say -4. See how that feels. So I'm just looking at the flashes and timing as well. See another one kind of growing right there. So just keep doing that until I'm happy. So I've got my crack, thunder crack, and then I've got the Balfron thunder. So I'll duplicate that one and just move it until it's rising right there. It's looking good. And then I think we can actually duplicate this one again and have it roll in right there. And I might duplicate it one more time and just nudge it back a little bit. I'm just kind of like one at a time coming in and making adjustments. And once more. We've got what looks like distant to And so on all of these remaining pieces, I'm going to go ahead and just fade all of this audio. I'm just going to fade it out for each individual audio track. I'm going to give it a keyframe that lines up with this one right here. So I might go ahead and just put a keyframe in for anything that's going past the end here. I'll come into the either initiate keyframes or add a keyframe if it needs one. So I'm just hitting L. Let's open that up. And then for each one at the very, very end, I'll just go to 0 or go to, where did I go here? This is -70. We'll see how it feels. All right. So from here, I think all we really need to do is think about like how we want to, if we want to do any manipulation at all to the final piece. And I think I might want to just play around with a little bit of settings here. So what I like to do is make a new adjustment layer and apply any settings or changes to this adjustment layer. So if we want to do some curves, I'll look for that. Maybe we just want to like darken it up a little bit, add a little more contrast. I think I might want to just add a little bit of a vignette layer over the top of it. I'm going to add a new solid layer and make that black. And I will make a I'll do an ellipse. And let's invert that. And let's feather it a lot. We'll do a mask expansion. Set it to be multiply. Great. I think we're pretty much ready to render this out. So I'm going to save File, Export, Add to Render Queue. We're going to call this, I'll just do H.264 with audio for this one. We'll call it Result. And hit render. So here's our final result. So pretty nice. All right, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you've learned something from these 4 videos. Covered how to model using procedurally using particle systems and sweep objects. We've looked at the volume tools and how to create solid objects out of those. Populated a forest using MoGraph and the landscape objects. We've made our own materials. We've found materials online for free, learned how to create them using those files. And we've learned how to work with fog and atmospherics, how to create lightning effects, and how to edit in the audio for the piece. So quite a lot. So thank you for coming along on the journey. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to get your free resources if you haven't gotten that yet. And I'll see you in a future video.